Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. 3 slow clicks. Then silence. I was sitting on the living room floor with the TV on mute, watching some cooking show where a guy was angrily flambeing duck, but I wasn't really watching it. I was staring at the shoes by the door, her shoes. The suede ones with the scuffed heel she swore she'd get repaired 6 months ago. She never did. She just kept wearing them out, like she was trying to destroy them one night at a time. They were gone when I got home that evening. And now, they were back. That's how I knew she was inside the house. Not by the sound of her voice, there wasn't one. Not by a slammed door or even a sigh. Just the shoes. Sitting there. Like they'd never moved at all. But they had. They had been with her. Wherever she went. With whoever she was with. And still, she didn't say a word. I didn't either. I could have. Believe me, I had a dozen polite, trembling little questions ready. I even practiced a few in my head earlier, pacing the hallway like some ghostly substitute teacher. Was the workshop good? Did you eat? Why didn't you text back for 5 hours? But none of those made it past my lips. Because the moment she walked past me, still in her coat, still smelling like leather and citrus, and something else I couldn't name, my body just locked up. My mouth stayed shut. My throat burned with everything I wanted to scream. She didn't look at me. She just walked down the hallway, turned left into the bedroom, and closed the door. Not slammed. Just closed. Like punctuation at the end of a sentence I didn't understand. I sat there on the floor for another 23 minutes. I remember the clock because the duck guy was now aggressively plating microgreens. Then the TV timed out, the screen went black, and I was alone with the quiet buzz of the refrigerator and the distant hum of a city that didn't care if my marriage was collapsing. The worst part? I didn't even cry. Not yet. I felt like I should. But there was nothing. Just this eerie, floating numbness. Like my body hadn't caught up to the betrayal yet. Like it needed a delay to process whatever that night was supposed to mean. When I finally stood up, my knees cracked. I turned off the lamp, walked into the kitchen, wrote something simple, folded it, left it beside her keys. Didn't even sign my name. She'd know it was from me. And then I left the house. No shoes. No bag. No word. Because if she could walk back in like nothing happened, then maybe I could walk out the same way. The walk outside felt colder than it should have. It was late spring, technically, but the air had that dry, cutting bite of a sleepless night. I didn't bring a jacket. I didn't bring my wallet. All I had on me were my sweatpants, an old hoodie, and the weight of 1,000 unanswered questions. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. I just didn't know where else to go. The 24-hour gas station at the end of our street had a flickering fluorescent sign, and I sat outside it on the curb like some middle-aged teenager who got locked out by his parents. I replayed the moment she walked past me again and again. It wasn't just that she didn't speak. It was the look in her eyes, or rather, the absence of one. Like she'd erased me. Like I had become a piece of furniture she no longer noticed. That kind of silence does something to you. It's not passive. It's violent in its own way. I kept staring at my phone, half hoping she'd text something, anything. Are you okay? Would have broken me. Even a where did you go would have given me a sliver of relevance. But the screen stayed black. Not even a missed call. She didn't care where I was. Or maybe worse, she knew exactly where I'd be. Quiet. Predictable. Weak. At 4:11 a.m., I walked back to the house. I didn't sneak. I wasn't trying to be stealthy. The door creaked when I opened it, and I wanted it to. I wanted her to hear me come in. But she didn't come out of the bedroom. Not to ask where I'd been. Not to make sure I was safe. The hallway lights remained off. The silence was thick. The folded paper I left on the kitchen counter was still sitting there, untouched. I hovered over it for a second, tempted to crumple it and pretend I hadn't written it at all. But I didn't. Because for once, I meant what I wrote. No theatrics. Just a plain sentence. I heard the heels. I smelled the lie. Don't speak tomorrow unless it's the truth. I went to the guest room, shut the door behind me, and collapsed on the bed with my shoes still on. I stared at the ceiling until morning light started creeping in through the blinds. That's when I heard her. Not her voice, but the sound of her picking up the note. It crinkled softly. Then silence again. I could picture her standing there in that overpriced black robe she never wore around me anymore, reading that single line, wondering how much I knew, or whether I was bluffing. She'd done this before, danced right up to the edge of being caught, then backpedaled with just enough tears to win my forgiveness. But this time, I didn't plan on giving her that option. At exactly 7:02 a.m., I got up and made myself coffee. She was standing in the kitchen when I entered, eyes puffy, cheeks pale. Still no words. Just that searching stare, like she was waiting for me to break first. But I didn't. I sipped my coffee in silence. I didn't offer her any. I didn't even look her in the eye. And that, I think, scared her more than anything I could have said. Because the man who used to ask, "Is everything okay?" was gone. And what was left was someone who'd finally had enough of being invisible. The morning stretched like a wire pulled too tight. Elise sat at the kitchen table, arms folded, staring at her untouched cup of tea. I watched the steam fade into the air while pretending to read the back of a cereal box. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't even thinking about food. I was thinking about how many lies could fit into 1 week, into one night, into a single look. She didn't speak. She didn't apologize. Not even a lazy excuse like she'd fallen asleep at a friend's place or lost track of time. She knew none of that would work anymore. That note, those 12 simple words, had taken away her usual script. There was no, "It wasn't what it looked like," because I didn't accuse her. No, "You're overreacting," because I hadn't even reacted. I just sat there across from her, sipping my coffee, giving her nothing. And in that void, she started to squirm. "You didn't come to bed," she finally said, her voice hoarse, as if she'd practiced silence longer than I had. It was a statement, not a question. She wasn't concerned, just confused, as if my absence had messed up her usual routine of avoidance and carefully timed affection. I didn't feel like it. I replied, not looking up. She blinked, caught off guard by the flatness of my tone. I could feel her calculating, trying to read between the syllables. She was waiting for a crack, some tremble, some break. But I wasn't giving her one. Not this time. She shifted in her chair. "You left this," she said, sliding the folded note toward me like it was evidence. "What's that supposed to mean?" I finally looked at her. Her eyes were tired, her makeup smudged from the night before. She hadn't showered yet. Still in the same clothes. That same coat draped over the back of the chair, half hiding the faint scent of cologne that didn't belong to me. "You know what it means," I said. Calm, controlled, detached. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I'd taken away her air. She wasn't used to this version of me. The one who didn't chase her down the hall, didn't beg for explanations, didn't fold under the weight of her half-truths. For once, the silence was mine, and she was the one drowning in it. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. I tilted my head slightly. "Then why do you look like you haven't slept?" That hit her. I saw the flicker of guilt flash across her face before she turned away, pretending to straighten the salt shaker like it needed to be centered on the table. I didn't press her. I let the question hang in the air like smoke, thick and heavy. I left the kitchen without another word, went to the guest room, shut the door, and locked it, not because I was afraid, but because it felt like the first real boundary I'd ever set in this house. I knew something was coming. The shift, the confrontation, the unraveling. But for now, I just wanted her to feel it. The weight of my absence. The unfamiliar sting of being on the outside of my silence. She had crossed a line the night before, and the scariest part for her was realizing I might not follow her across it this time. I stayed in the guest room longer than necessary, not because I was avoiding her, but because I needed her to feel the absence. I wanted her to hear the muffled stillness of the house without my usual footsteps pacing the hallway, without the sound of me humming to myself while folding laundry or muttering about the news while scrolling my phone. I wanted her to sit with that space, with everything she'd taken for granted. From behind the door, I could hear her start cleaning, but not real cleaning. It was that kind of restless, guilty scrubbing people do when their thoughts get too loud. I heard the clink of dishes she'd already washed yesterday, the vacuum running over the same patch of carpet in the living room, the scent of lemon spray, thick, artificial, desperate. It was almost funny. She was trying to control the environment because she couldn't control the silence. I didn't open the door. I just sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the framed photo of us on the dresser. It was from a weekend trip 2 years ago. Asheville, I think. We looked happy, but now I couldn't tell if we were actually happy or just good at faking it. I studied her smile in the photo, trying to figure out if it had already started to fade back then, and I just hadn't noticed. I kept thinking, when did I stop being enough? When did coming home to me become an afterthought? By the time I stepped out around noon, the kitchen sparkled. The trash had been taken out. The rugs were vacuumed. The throw pillows fluffed like we were hosting guests. Except there were no guests. Just a woman trying to erase the evidence of guilt with Windex and denial. She stood by the sink, startled when I walked in. Her eyes darted to me like she wasn't sure whether to speak or pretend I was still just a figment moving through her perfectly arranged silence. "I made lunch," she said quickly. "If you want something." I didn't answer right away. I walked to the fridge and opened it, staring blankly at the rows of organized containers and carefully placed leftovers. My stomach twisted at the idea of eating anything she touched. Not because I thought she'd done anything to it, but because the gesture was too familiar, too normal. And nothing about this moment was normal anymore. "I'm not hungry," I said, closing the door. She looked at me like she wanted to say more, but couldn't figure out where to begin. So instead, she followed me into the living room, standing a few feet behind as I sat down and reached for the remote. "Are we going to talk about this?" she asked. I turned the volume up slightly. "About what?" "You know what." "No," I said flatly. "I really don't." There was a pause. Then the breath. That inhale people take before they start lying to you. I knew it too well by now. "I didn't cheat," she blurted. Too fast. Too soon. And far too specific for a conversation that hadn't named anything yet. I didn't look at her. I just nodded slowly and replied, "Funny. I never said you did." She froze. That was the moment it hit her. I wasn't playing by the old rules anymore. I wasn't going to list the evidence, corner her with timelines, or plead for answers. I was letting her fill the space, and that terrified her. She sat down on the armrest across from me, her voice suddenly soft. "Nolan, I know what it looked like. But I swear, it's not what you're thinking." I turned to her and finally met her eyes. "You have no idea what I'm thinking." Because the truth was, even I didn't. I was still trying to figure out if I wanted the truth, or if I just wanted to see how long she'd go without giving it. She looked like she was about to cry, and for a moment, I wondered if that was her strategy or something real trying to push through. Elise never liked crying in front of anyone, not even me. But now she blinked too often and bit her lower lip like someone desperately trying to soften a truth they weren't ready to admit. The problem was, I'd seen her lie before. And this felt like déjà vu with better lighting. "Nolan, please," she began again, her voice trembling like a song out of tune. "That night, I didn't. Look, I was with Kara. You can call her if you don't believe me." Kara. Of course. The human alibi. I almost laughed. Elise never used her name unless something needed covering. She always said, "I'm going out with the girls," or "heading to the workshop." But when Kara became front and center in a sentence, it was usually because she was her firewall. Convenient, loyal, and vague enough not to contradict details. I leaned forward slightly. "So you were with Kara until 2:17 a.m.? You two were workshopping until after midnight on a Thursday?" She opened her mouth and then closed it again. I watched the calculation behind her eyes. Every second of delay was louder than any answer. "We went to a bar after. Just to unwind," she said, finally. "It got late. I had a few drinks, so I crashed at her place." "But you came home," I replied, not as a question. "You didn't sleep there." That caught her. I saw it. The stutter in her breath. She was unraveling faster than she realized. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to wake her, so I left early. I came home. I knew you'd be worried." That last line did it. I let out a short breath through my nose. Not quite a laugh. More like a cough choked in sarcasm. "You knew I'd be worried. So you ghosted me for 7 hours? That makes sense." She stood up then, a little too quickly. "Why are you doing this? You're acting like I murdered someone." "No," I said, standing too. "I'm acting like someone who's been lied to one too many times and finally stopped pretending it doesn't hurt." She took a step back. Her posture shifted. Arms crossed. Chin up, defensive. "You always assume the worst. You twist everything. I try to explain, and you already have your mind made up." I smiled without meaning to. "You haven't explained anything. You gave me a name and a bar and a timeline that doesn't add up. That's not clarity, Elise. That's improv." Her lips tightened. She was furious now, not at what I said, but because I didn't break like I used to. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't beg. I didn't ask her if we could fix it. I just stood there, steady, like I was watching the version of her I once loved peel away with every word. "What do you want from me?" she asked, and this time, it wasn't rhetorical. It was desperate. "I want the truth," I said, "even if it ruins everything." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. So I walked away again. Not because I wanted to win the argument. Not because I had some grand plan. But because her silence said more than her story ever could. And for the first time, I was done filling in the blanks for her. I stayed out the rest of the day. I didn't pack a bag or slam a door. I just left, got in the car, drove aimlessly for hours, let the city pass by in a haze of brake lights and blurred storefronts. I didn't even turn on the radio. The silence was louder than any song could have been. I kept thinking over and over about her question, "What do you want from me?" And my answer, the truth, still hung in my mind like a broken chandelier, all jagged edges and weight. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour diner, I hadn't eaten all day. I ordered a grilled cheese and soup I didn't touch. I just sat there in the booth, staring out the window while people came and went. Teenagers laughing over milkshakes, old couples who didn't need to speak anymore, truckers watching the world through tired eyes. And there I was, a man unraveling over a marriage built on routines and slowly whispered lies. Around 7:43 p.m., I got the voicemail. It buzzed in while I was outside the diner, throwing away the soup cup untouched. I saw the screen light up. Missed call, Elise. For a second, I considered deleting it without listening. But some part of me, a part one didn't want to acknowledge, still hoped she might say the thing I needed to hear. An apology. A confession. A sentence that finally sounded like it came from her real voice. Instead, what I heard nearly made my knees give out. The message started with laughter. Not the kind she used around me. This one was lower, flirtatious. The sound of someone completely relaxed, unguarded. "Hey, I just got in. I'm still thinking about last night. You're such a jerk for what you whispered in the elevator. If Nolan ever found out, he'd lose it." Silence. Then her voice, softer. "I should go? He's probably home by now. I'll call you when I can." End of message. I stood there frozen, my phone still in my hand. I played it again, and on the third time, I noticed it. She hadn't meant to leave that for me. That message wasn't for my ears. She must have accidentally called me when she meant to call him. And for all her lies, that was the first honest thing I'd heard from her in months. I didn't go home right away. I sat in the car, parked behind a grocery store, staring at the dash until the stars came out. I felt hollow. But beneath the numbness, something else stirred. It wasn't rage. I wasn't going to key her car, or break her favorite mirror, or call every friend and blow it all up. That's not who I am. That's never been me. But I wasn't going to be the man sitting quietly on the sidelines anymore, either. When I finally walked through the front door just before midnight, she was sitting on the couch, eyes puffy like she'd been crying for show. She opened her mouth to speak, probably to serve me some new variation of the same tired story. But I didn't give her the chance. I held up my phone, pressed play, and let the voicemail echo through the living room. Her face drained as she realized what it was. And then, for the first time since this whole thing started, I was the one who didn't say a word. I just watched her fall apart in the same silence she had buried me in the night before. Her expression shifted so quickly it almost didn't register. From pale shock to defensive denial in a single breath. She stared at me as the voicemail played out, her mouth slightly parted like a frozen actress who'd missed her cue. When it ended, there was a sharp silence, sharp enough to cut the air between us. I didn't mean for that to," she started, stepping forward, but I raised my hand. Just a single, quiet motion. Not to scare her, not to assert anything, just to stop the next lie before it left her mouth. "No more," I said quietly. "Don't explain. Don't spin it. You've done enough." But she didn't stop. She never could. Elise had always been the type to argue her way through a burning building. And she did exactly that. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice shaking now, but not with guilt. It was panic. Panic that I wasn't folding. That I wasn't interrupting her with a tearful why. That I wasn't asking if there was still something to save. "You think that message proves something?" "Nolan, it was a joke. I was being stupid. You know how I talk with Kara." I turned my back on her mid-sentence and walked to the kitchen. Not to make a scene. I just needed space between us. She followed, of course, her voice trailing after me like a fog I couldn't shake. "You're overreacting. You don't know the full story." "I know enough," I replied. My hands were gripping the edge of the counter, so hard my knuckles turned white. "I know what it sounds like when you're happy. And that wasn't your voice with me. That laugh wasn't mine. And the elevator? Really?" Her silence this time was worse than her words. I turned to find her standing there, arms limp, eyes wide, searching for the version of me that used to beg. That man had died about 5 hours ago in the back lot of a grocery store. Okay, she said finally. You want the truth? Fine. She crossed her arms, the sadness vanishing as fast as it appeared. Yes, I've been seeing someone, but only for a few months. It didn't start out that way. We met at the writing class, and it just happened. That phrase, it just happened, rang in my ears like an insult. His name is Rory, she continued, like the name would somehow make it more palatable. He's been through a divorce. He understands things I couldn't explain to you. There it was. The unspoken, you were never enough. But she was too polished to say it like that. Instead, she dressed it in excuses and emotional language. She always did. I was lonely, Nolan. You've been drifting for a long time. You never talk about anything real anymore. You just sit with your podcasts and your old books and pretend like everything's fine. My laugh surprised even me. So you slept with someone because I like birds and don't shout at you? Her lips tightened. You know that's not what I mean. No, Elise. I actually don't. Because I gave you everything I had. Quietly. Consistently. Every single damn day. And you buried it under excuses and text messages and perfume that wasn't for me. She stepped forward again, softer this time. I'm sorry, but it was too late. That word, sorry, meant nothing anymore. It wasn't an act of healing, it was a verbal receipt. Proof that she knew it was over, but wanted to be remembered as someone who tried. I walked past her. Again. But this time, she didn't follow. And that silence meant everything. The next morning, the house was dead quiet. Elise hadn't come to bed. For the first time in years, I didn't wonder where she was, or who she might be texting. I didn't replay our arguments in my head or script what I would say next. I simply got up, made myself a full breakfast, eggs, toast, orange juice, the whole deal, and ate at the table alone without a knot in my stomach. She finally emerged around 9 a.m., wearing that same robe she once reserved for lazy Sunday mornings and soft jazz. But now it looked like a costume, something she wore to play pretend. She didn't say a word when she saw my suitcase by the door. She glanced at it, then looked away, like confronting it would make it more real. I'm going to stay with my brother for a while, I said calmly. I need space. Real space. Not just the guest room. She nodded, her mouth opening and closing like she had words ready but couldn't figure out which ones were safe to say. I gave her a long look. Not cruel, not vengeful. Just final. There was nothing more to argue about. No scene to perform. No dramatic goodbye. I left. But not to disappear. Not to sulk. I didn't vanish into a motel room or drown in self-pity. I actually started living again. It began small. A walk to the park without checking my phone. A coffee shop visit where I ordered something new instead of the usual. I picked up my old field notebook and started jotting down birds I hadn't seen in years. It was quiet. Simple. But for the first time in a long time, it was mine. Within a few weeks, I found an apartment that didn't feel like a downgrade. It felt like a reset. White walls, no shared memories, just potential. I even laughed again. Like a real, belly-deep laugh when a friend sent me a video of a goose chasing a man across a golf course. Silly stuff, but it reminded me that joy didn't need permission from someone else. Elise did try to reach out again, once. A message that said, I miss the way things used to be. But I didn't respond. Because I don't. I don't miss who I was with her. Silent, cautious, unsure if I was ever truly loved or just tolerated. And as painful as this story began, it led me here, a version of myself who no longer needs to be validated to feel real. So no, I didn't get the girl back. But I got me back. And that's more than I ever expected. If you've made it this far, thanks for listening to my story here on Reddit Confessions. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one historical event that changed the course of a person's life forever? Something that inspires you, shocks you, or makes you think twice about the way things are. Share it in the comments, and let's learn from each other.